hearing tonight. The hearing is now considered open. My name is Joelle Burleson. I'm the Senior Regulatory Advisor at the North Carolina Division of Air Quality's Raleigh Central Office. I have been appointed to be the hearing officer for this public hearing by the Director of the Division of Air Quality, Mike Abrazinskas. My purpose this evening is to receive your comments, either written or oral, for consideration in the issuance of the draft of the Regional Haze State Implementation Plan, or SIP, for North Carolina Class 1 areas for the second planning period from 2019 through 2028. This pre-hearing draft SIP was prepared in accordance with the Federal Regional Haze Rule provisions specified in 40 CFR 51.308F and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's guidance for implementing the rule to comply with Section 169 of the Clean Air Act, as amended in 1990. This SIP also contains the second 5-year progress report covering the period 2010 through 2018 as required in 40 CFR 51.308G of the Regional Haze Rule. North Carolina's Class 1 federal areas, please see 40 CFR 81.422 for the list, include the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Joyce-Kilmer Slick Rock Wilderness Area, Linville Gorge Wilderness Area, Shining Rock Wilderness Area, and Swan Quarter Wilderness Area. The focus of this hearing, and the only focus, is to receive public comments on the draft Regional Haze SIP. The Division of Air Quality is conducting this public hearing digitally to allow for participation while protecting public health under current guidance to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The public hearing announcement was published on the NCDEQ website on August 30th, 2021. During this virtual public hearing, we will be receiving oral comments from those individuals who pre-registered to speak at this event. If you are having technical difficulties with WebEx, you can use the chat feature in WebEx to ask questions or seek assistance. Joining me for this hearing tonight are several DAQ representatives. From DAQ's Raleigh Central Office, we have Randy Strait, Chief of the Planning Section, Tammy Manning, Attainment Planning Branch Supervisor, Patrick Nolson, Rules Development Branch Supervisor, Zainab Nassif, our Public Information Officer, and Heather Wiley, Meteorologist with the Planning Section, Elliot Tardif, also with our Planning Section and a meteorologist in our group, and Josh Bartlett. There may also be local officials with us tonight, and we thank you for attending. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that our Deputy Director, Michael Jetra, is also with us tonight. The comment period for the draft Regional Haze SIP opened on August 30th and will close on Friday, October 15th, 2021. In addition to your oral comments tonight, the division is also accepting comments via email, mail, and by phone to a voicemail box. The email address and phone number for the voicemail is displayed on your screen. Oral, electronic, and written comments will all be equally considered. The draft SIP, public notice, and pertinent documents related to the SIP are available on the DAQ website at https://deq.nc.gov/regional-haze. They are also available to the public at the following locations: the Division of Air Quality Central Office Planning Section, located at 217 West Jones Street in Raleigh, North Carolina; the Asheville Regional Office, located at 2090 U.S. Highway 70 in Swannanoa, North Carolina; and the Washington Regional Office, located at 943 Washington Square Mall in Washington, NC. If you wish to review these materials in person, they are available during normal business hours at the locations I just mentioned. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, an appointment is required. Please call in advance to make an appointment. The order of events for this hearing are as follows. First, Mr. Randy Strait, the Planning Section Chief at the Raleigh Central Office, will give a presentation regarding the draft SIP. This will be followed by the public comment period. We will receive oral comments from those individuals who pre-registered to speak at this event. Please note that due to a technical issue, the names of those who previously registered to speak prior to October 5th were not recorded, and a new registration link was sent out. We will go in order of those who pre-registered to speak at the new registration link, and we will then open the floor to those who type their name in the chat or raise their virtual hand. This will allow us to have an accurate hearing record. We apologize for any inconvenience. A reminder that there are other ways to provide public comments, such as through mail, email, or phone, and all are considered equally. To provide enough time for the public comments, this meeting will be conducted in the following manner. Efforts will be made to call speakers in the same order of your registration. Oral statements will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes in order to hear as many speakers as possible. This public hearing is scheduled to adjourn no later than 9 p.m. tonight. I will call the name of each speaker, and then our WebEx host, Heather Wiley, or India Bryant, will unmute the speaker and tell them it is their turn to speak. I will also announce the name of the next speaker in the queue so they can prepare to provide their comments. Please do not start speaking until Heather has indicated that your microphone has been unmuted. Your time will begin when Heather has unmuted your microphone. We'll keep track of your time, and I will announce when your 5 minutes have expired. Please respect the time of all who wish to speak or provide oral comments tonight by adhering to the time limits and closing your remarks as quickly as possible once time is up. Cross-examination of the person presenting comments to me, the hearing officer, will not be allowed. Questions directed to Division of Air Quality staff members will not be answered during this hearing. If you have questions for DAQ staff, we can provide you with our contact information, so you may contact them after the meeting during normal office hours. After receiving comments this evening, the hearing record will be closed. However, the period for submitting comments does not close until Friday, October 15th at midnight. Again, the only focus of this virtual public hearing is the presentation of comments related to draft regional Haste SIP. Comments and the DAQ's responses to the comments will be included in the hearing record for the final SIP submitted to the U.S. EPA. I will now call on Randy Strait, the Planning Section Chief, to give a brief presentation on the draft regional Haste SIP. Mr. Strait.
Thank you, Joel. Next slide, please. As Joel indicated, the purpose of this public hearing is to take comments on North Carolina's proposed regional Haste SIP. The regional Haste program is a federal program intended to improve visibility in 156 national parks and wilderness areas. These are referred to as Class 1 areas. And this SIP addresses the 5 Class 1 areas in North Carolina. And the goal is to return each of the Class 1 areas to natural visibility conditions by 2064. This is the second planning effort covering the period 2019 through 2028. We refer to this as our round 2 SIP. Next slide, please. This slide shows our Class 1 areas in North Carolina. Swan Quarter Wilderness area is in Hyde County on the east coast, and then the remainder of the Class 1 areas are on the west side of the state. We share planning responsibility with Tennessee for Great Smoky Mountains National Park and George Kilmer's Slick Rock Wilderness area. Next slide, please. The regional Haste rule lays out 2 tracking metrics, referred to as 20% most anthropogenically impaired or man-made impaired days, and then no worsening of visibility on the 20% clearest days. So the improved program refers to interagency monitoring of protected visual environments, operates a monitoring network in our Class 1 areas throughout the country, and those class monitors are operated about every third day. So we have roughly 120 days worth of data where the monitors are operated, and we take 20% of the most impaired days and then 20% of the clearest days for each year, and those days do change from year to year. And those are our two tracking metrics that we use for planning purposes. This is an iterative planning process. So our third SIP, or round 3 SIP, will be due in July, the end of July 2028, and every 10 years thereafter. We also prepare progress reports every 5 years, and this is to measure our progress against the goals we established through our 10-year SIP. So the next progress report.
Excuse me, Randy, this is Joelle. Could you try to speak up a bit louder? We're getting some feedback that it's difficult to hear you.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Could you speak again, please?
Is that better?
A little bit. Can you increase your volume any?
Yeah, I'm trying. How's that? Better?
A little bit less static on my end. I don't know about for others.
Okay. I'll try to speak loudly then. Next slide, please. So these charts, we have one chart for each of our Class 1 areas. Joyce Kilmer Slick Rock does not have an improved monitor, so we use the improved monitor for Great Smokies to monitor visibility impairment for Great and Joyce Kilmer Slick Rock. And we measure visibility impairment by the haziness index expressed in decibels, which is defined by the regional Haze rule. And the rule requires us to construct these charts, and what the pink line represents is what's referred to as the glide path. And then the green line represents, for the most impaired days, it represents natural conditions. So we start on the pink line, start with the 5-year average of 2000 through 2004 monitoring data for the 20% most impaired days, and we draw the line to meet the green line in 2064. So the peak line then represents kind of like a yardstick against which we can measure progress in terms of how we're doing. The brown line, it represents actual improved monitoring data. It's the 5-year average of that data through 2018. And as we can see for each of our Class 1 areas here, the monitoring data is showing that we've achieved significant improvement in terms of improving visibility for the 20% most impaired days. The purple line defines that's the modeling that we conducted, and it factors in projections about emission controls associated with federal and state measures, regional progress analysis, along with facility closures, and we also incorporate growth factors. But overall, we're projecting these regional progress goals for 2028 to be even beyond, showing continued improvement beyond what we've achieved today. Next slide, please. And this next slide shows the 20% clearest days. The pink line represents baseline conditions. And then the rolling average of the monitoring data, 5-year rolling average, is shown by the brown line through 2018. And the purple line shows our projected regional progress goals for the clearest days. And all of this is showing not only that we are demonstrating no worsening of the clearest days, but actually improving on those days. Next slide, please. North Carolina, we started this work about over 3.5 years ago. We collaborated with our regional planning organization, SESARM, which included all of 10 southeastern states, all the local agencies in those states, along with the tribal authorities, to develop the projection year inventory and to complete the modeling for 2028 for all Class 1 areas throughout the Southeast. And this is to develop a strategy, a consistent strategy, which states have been using to inform their long-term strategy and regional progress analysis. North Carolina closely followed the Clean Air Act and EPA's regional Haze rule and guidance to develop this SIP, and initial comments from EPA and the federal land managers have been supportive of the draft SIP. Next slide. And Joelle, that's the end of my presentation. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Randy. At this time, we will hear from those who pre-registered to provide oral comments this evening. When your name is called, our WebEx host, Heather Wiley, will unmute your microphone so you can provide your comments. To ensure our records are complete, please clearly state your name and who you are representing. To ensure our records are complete, again, please clearly state your name and whom you are representing. Your comments will be recorded, so please speak loudly and clearly toward your microphone or telephone. Please do not start speaking until the WebEx host has indicated that your microphone has been unmuted. If you're using a telephone, please press *3 to raise your hand so we can recognize you. So this evening, our first speaker will be Jerry Rivers.
Jerry Rivers, if you could please identify your line by pressing *3. That way I can locate you.
Is Mr. Rivers on the line? Okay, we will circle back to Mr. Rivers, as we're not getting indication that he's currently online. Our next speaker this evening is Ula Reeves.
Ula Reeves, your mic has been unmuted. You can proceed with your comment.
Following Ms.
Hi,
Reeves.
good evening.
Sorry, we'll have Will Harlan.
Good evening. My name is Ula Reeves. I am the Senior Advocacy Manager in the Clean Air Program of the National Parks Conservation Association. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on North Carolina's Regional Haze Plan. I'll focus my comments on the areas where the SIP falls short in meeting the goals of the program. If left unchanged, the state's plan will not comply with the Clean Air Act and the Regional Haze Rule, as it does not make reasonable progress and does nothing new to limit pollution. It is important that DAQ get this plan right, so we urge you to take the time to remedy the places that are out of alignment with the EPA clarification memo, stakeholder concerns, and the National Park Service, whose concerns have not been adequately addressed in this SIP. We understand that time is of the essence, but it is critical that North Carolina make continued progress toward clean air for all of our national parks and wilderness areas. North Carolina should have reviewed its impact on any Class 1 areas, not just those inside the borders of this state. The EPA memo says that states must secure additional emission reductions that build on progress already achieved. There is an expectation that reductions be additive to ongoing and upcoming plans. Yet DAQ improperly concludes that no new reductions are warranted despite the tens of thousands of tons of controllable pollution through cost-effective controls from facilities across the state. In addition, source selection thresholds should be set to capture meaningful portion of the state's total contribution to visibility impairing Class 1 areas. Of the state's 28 sources of visibility polluting facilities, DAQ chose only 3 non-coal sources because of its reliance on the exceptionally high thresholds set through the VISTAS approach, completely omitting North Carolina's top five biggest polluters, which are Duke Energy coal plants. Second, EPA expects states to consider both sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Due to its reliance on the flawed VISTAS modeling, DAQ has erroneously omitted NOx pollution in its entire analysis. This omission must be corrected. Third, DAQ has routinely emphasized that so much progress has been made in North Carolina Class 1 areas that we are far ahead of the Haze schedule. Again, North Carolina's Haze plan ought to consider impacts on any Class 1 areas, not just those in our state. And while North Carolina has tackled important air pollution problems in the past, it is inappropriate for DAQ to rely on previous successes or use that Haze glide path indicator as justification for doing nothing in this rulemaking. EPA's memo specifies that a state should not reject pollution controls merely because there have been emission reductions since the first planning period, or merely because visibility is otherwise projected to improve at Class 1 areas. Fourth, DAQ is improperly using announced retirements of coal facilities to further justify avoidance of their full consideration in the SIP. Those coal facilities should have been chosen in source selection, fully analyzed, and any planned retirements codified in the Haze SIP as enforceable measures. Finally, EPA encourages states to consider equity and environmental justice impacts. DAQ has not conducted any kind of environmental justice screen or considered disproportionate impacts in source selection or in emission control evaluation in SIP planning. We urge you to go back and revisit environmental justice considerations. That concludes my comments. Thank you for your time and to the DAQ staff for all their hard work. We look forward to reviewing improvements to this plan.
Thank you for your comments and participation tonight. We've had one note, Ms. Woods, we will come to you at the end of the registered speakers. You will have an opportunity to speak at that time. So we'll call you then. Okay, so our next speaker is Will Harlan. And following Mr. Harlan, we have a Leslie Griffith who is signed up.
Will Harlan, your microphone has been unmuted. You can proceed with your comment.
Thank you. My name is Will Harlan. I am the senior editor of Blue Ridge Outdoors magazine, part of an outdoor industry that provides 260,000 jobs in the state of North Carolina and contributes $28 billion to the North Carolina economy every year. We signed on to a letter along with 100 other outdoor businesses and organizations across the state, urging North Carolina to substantially improve its Haze Rule implementation plan. Businesses across the state and every air-breathing North Carolinian will be seriously harmed by this plan. North Carolina's plan does absolutely nothing to improve visibility or air quality. Now, the EPA laid it out for you very clearly a couple of months ago. They issued a clarifying memo that spelled it out exactly what they expect from each state's implementation plan. I want to point out 4 ways that North Carolina utterly fails to meet EPA's clearly defined expectations. First, North Carolina does not evaluate nitrogen oxides. I want to read directly from the memo, which states, EPA generally expects that each state will analyze sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide in selecting sources and determining control measures. 2, North Carolina's plan excludes 5 of the 6 largest sources of haze-causing emissions in the state, Duke's coal-burning power plants. The EPA memo clearly states a threshold that excludes a state's largest visibility-impairing sources from selection is more likely to be deemed unreasonable. 3, North Carolina's plan does absolutely nothing. It does not require any additional control measures for the 3 plants it evaluated and does 0 to improve visibility and air quality in North Carolina. Now the DAQ seems to be defending this do-nothing plan by saying we're already on track, so nothing more needs to be done. Well, EPA seems to be responding specifically to North Carolina in its memo when it writes, EPA has reviewed several draft regional Haze SIPs that conclude that additional controls are not needed because all the Class 1 areas in their state are below their uniform rates of progress. The 2017 preamble and August 2019 guidance clearly state that it is not appropriate to use the uniform rate of progress in this manner. As a safe harbor, states must select a reasonable number of sources and evaluate and determine reasonable emission reduction measures necessary to make reasonable progress. This plan is supposed to actually make reasonable progress. Right now, this plan proposes to do absolutely nothing. 4, this plan does not address environmental justice at all. EPA's memo states that it encourages states to consider whether there may be equity and environmental justice impacts when developing their regional haze strategies for the second planning period. DAQ has consistently failed to do this. The second largest source of haze-causing emissions in North Carolina is the Marshall Coal Plant, just outside of Charlotte. Charlotte has the worst air quality in the state. You could improve the health of the most vulnerable communities already disproportionately affected by air pollution and meet your EPA obligations by including the Marshall Coal Plant in your analysis. Yet DAQ has consistently chosen not to evaluate the second largest source of haze emissions in the state. Finally, DAQ has consistently misrepresented the serious concerns expressed by the National Park Service, which has clearly outlined its concerns over the outdated modeling data used by DAQ and its failure to include nitrogen oxides and its failure to include the coal-fired power plants. This was mentioned specifically in the National Park Service's comments to the state. So come on, folks. This is not your best work. The Smokies is one of the most polluted parks in the country, ranked among the worst for visibility, and you're proposing a do-nothing plan. I urge the state to adopt a stronger plan that follows EPA's clear instructions and the National Park Service's recommendations. Include nitrogen oxides and the 6 additional coal-fired power plant sources. This concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harlan. Our next speaker is Leslie Griffith.
Leslie Griffith, if you could please identify your line by pressing *3. Thank you. You've been unmuted. You may proceed with your comment now.
Thank you. My name is Leslie Griffith, and I'm a staff attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We have serious concerns that North Carolina is falling short of its obligations under the Regional Haze Program. The state has made admirable progress over the last 20 years in providing clearer skies and healthier air across the state. But its work is not yet done. The state is missing an opportunity to improve clear skies in treasured places like the Smokies while reining in dirty energy and protecting communities from harmful air pollution. First, the state's selection of just 3 sources is unreasonable and against EPA's guidance. When many sources pollute protected areas in North Carolina and its neighboring states, North Carolina has to look at more than just a handful of polluting facilities. Second, North Carolina has refused to evaluate possible haze pollution reductions from any of Duke Energy's coal-fired power plants. These plants are some of the biggest contributors to haze and smog in the state. Marshall is barely 100 miles from Shining Rock Wilderness. Cliffside is even closer. And DEQ ignored feasible, cost-effective upgrades at these plants that could reduce pollution and haze. DAQ cannot just assume these power plants will pollute drastically less by 2028 unless there are enforceable requirements that guarantee this. By relying on unenforceable projections and refusing to even submit these sources to 4-factor analysis, DAQ is contradicting EPA's clear guidance and contradicting common sense. Third, DAQ has refused to consider nitrogen oxides pollution, even though this is a bigger and bigger source of haze pollution. The agency must consider NOx pollution both for sources like Domtar Paper Company and Blue Ridge Paper and for the coal-fired power plants that DAQ did not even look at. Finally, North Carolina is ignoring EPA's clear instructions to incorporate environmental justice into its regional haze planning. The same pollution that causes haze also poses serious health and welfare threats to communities who live closest to polluting facilities. DAQ has done no meaningful environmental justice analysis and has not looked at all of the communities most affected by pollution. A true environmental justice analysis would not simply look at an area immediately surrounding the Class 1 areas in the state. It would look at the communities around the polluting facilities themselves. The Clean Air Act provides clear authority for North Carolina to step up, protect its residents, its neighbors, and its treasured landscapes. The state is unreasonably refusing to use that authority, risking EPA disapproval and stalling further progress toward clear skies. North Carolina can and must do more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffith. Our next speaker will be Krista Early.
Can you guys hear me?
Krista Early, your mic has been unmuted and you may proceed with your comment.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to submit comments in response to the draft regional Haze state implementation plan. My name is Krista Early, and I'm an advocate with Environment North Carolina, a state-based nonprofit dedicated to protecting our air, water, and open spaces. I'm here today to respectfully ask you to amend the regional Haze plan to require reductions in unhealthy air pollution from coal-fired power plants and other sources. North Carolina has a myriad of unique ecosystems, including 5 Class 1 areas. It's our responsibility to be good stewards of our environment. Each year, people from all across the state and nation visit our parks and protected natural spaces, which extend from western Asheville to our coastal areas. Our parks and wilderness areas are plagued by air pollution. It threatens the health of our visitors and the communities that neighbor these areas. Polluting facilities that contribute to poor visibility in these areas are also the main drivers of the climate crisis. In fact, nearly 90% of our national parks are plagued by haze pollution caused mostly by coal plants, vehicles, and other industrial sources. Not only do our national parks suffer the consequences from haze pollution, but all North Carolinians do. Environment North Carolina Research and Policy Center released a report titled Troubled in the Air that called attention to the very real public health problems air pollution can cause and discussed why tackling climate pollution has an impact on air quality. The data shows that many North Carolinians have suffered through over a month of polluted air in 2020. Clean air quality is paramount for a healthy environment as well as healthy ecosystems at our national park. The state of North Carolina has proposed a regional Haze plan that lacks adequate protections for our parks and communities because it fails to reduce sufficient emissions to help reach clean air goals. An analysis done by the National Parks Conservation Association on publicly available data identified the worst sources of haze pollution that potentially affects Class 1 areas in North Carolina. Their analysis cites fossil fuel electric power generation as the worst contributor. Despite the tens of thousands of tons of controllable pollution from North Carolina sources, including coal-fired power plants, paper mills, and phosphate facilities, and the many opportunities for cost-effective controls, North Carolina improperly concludes that no new reductions in pollution are warranted. The state's 4-factor emission reduction analysis omitted any coal-fired power plants, which resulted in some of the biggest haze polluters in the state not being selected. If left unchanged, we will not be making reasonable progress toward naturally clean air, which is what is at the heart of the Haze rule. On behalf of the members of Environment North Carolina, we ask that the North Carolina Division of Air Quality revise the rule to include the evaluation of and require emission reductions by coal-fired power plants, the state's largest source of visibility-impairing emissions, and to thoroughly assess environmental justice impacts and nitrogen oxides as the EPA has recommended. Thank you again for this opportunity to share Environment North Carolina's concerns with the division.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Ms. Rachel Woods.
Rachel Woods, your mic has been unmuted. You may proceed with your comment.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Woods. I'm the co-founder of a community-led advocacy group, Clean Air Holly Springs, founded in a small bedroom community south of Raleigh. Our goal is to begin a conversation in our community about air quality. We have initiated an idling reduction pledge campaign asking our community members to not idle and park, knowing that the emissions from combustible engines contributes to the concentration of nitrous oxides, which contribute to smog, particulate matter, and climate pollution. It's a simple story and a simple ask we are sharing with our friends and neighbors, although air pollution is anything but simple. I am certain the North Carolina Division of Air Quality understands the multifaceted, complicated intricacies of air pollution and yet the regional Haze plan in its current form is woefully simplified. While simplifying a message to laymen may be necessary to promote behavior change, like not idling parked vehicles, oversimplifying regulations to protect the quality of our air is negligent. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of my community to voice concern over the proposed regional Haze plan that, as written, fails to limit haze causing pollution. The coal-fired power plants, paper mills, and phosphate plants in our state produce more nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, atmospheric warming carbon dioxide, and particulate matter than any Holly Springs parent running their engine while waiting to pick up a child from practice or school. Yet any changes we can make individually or as a state is a move in the right direction. Coal-fired power plants alone account for 46% of the visibility impairing emissions in our state, and yet they are not included in the draft plan. I am left wondering why our state agency tasked with keeping our air clean would do anything but set high standards for pollution reduction. Our air pollution issues will not be resolved with individual actions alone. The pollutants you are charged with regulating affect the visibility at our remarkable parks and the biodiversity of our wild areas. They affect the well-being of North Carolina residents and have a direct effect on worker productivity, attendance in schools, and on the number of tourists coming to our state, boosting local economies. And they contribute to the warming of our planet. Since the inception of the Clean Air Act and the Regional Haze Plan, we have seen improvements in air quality. We know regulation works. We have the technology to implement tighter standards, and it is your duty, instilled in you by federal law, to write a plan that can actually make measurable and actionable improvements moving forward. I ask that you include nitrous oxide emissions in your plan and that you expand your updated regulations to all 28 haze-creating polluters in our beautiful state of North Carolina. Thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Those are all of the speakers that we have signed up at present. So at this time, we will ask you, if you are interested in speaking but have not signed up, to please indicate so. You may either use your virtual hand on WebEx or press *3 on the phone to indicate that you would like to speak.
Call-in user, your microphone has been unmuted. Please state your name and can proceed with your comment.
Hello, my name is Maple Osterbrink. I live in Chapel.
We seem to have lost your audio, Ms. Osterbrink.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Marianne Osterbrink. I go by Maple, like the tree, because I changed my name back to my nature name that I used for camps 7 years ago, when it looked like the climate issue is just so scary and people aren't really doing anything about it. You know, like Greta when I'm older. I was like Greta when I was younger. But anyway, it's really good to hear Will. He's helped us in Chapel Hill by phone and Zoom to deal with our polluting coal plant that we have on UNC campus that Duke sold to UNC. So that's been my latest project that I do in my spare retirement. I spent my whole retirement every day, including weekends. I fight for climate, and I fight mostly utilities. I'm in a bunch of groups, probably 10 groups, statewide, nationwide groups, anything I can do to stop this madness. And I appreciate the people that have been on. I just heard the last 3 people share. And NOx and SOx are coming right out of our coal plant here. The EPA was in crisis, kind of, with Chump in office, let's face it. So the Clean Power Plan, got waylaid, which is terrible. DC is very slow to act. We have no patience. The American public wants, Green New Deal. They want things changed. And DC is very, very slow. But even slow EPA, is telling North Carolina, which apparently is even slower than the Fed. So that's pretty bad. So I'm asking them too. DAQ just approved a permit for this coal plant here in Chapel Hill. Sorry, stumbling over my words a little bit. they approved a permit that would be worse than ever for climate and for people to have no limit on the heat. And so they can dump that 1 million pounds a day of coal from West Virginia, people getting black lung up there, you know, mining still, and wherever they get it out west in Utah, Powder River Basin, it comes by rail. And there's no limit on the amount of heat. So it can be even more NOx and more SOx. And then they approve this. How can that even be? We've got county laws, we've got resolutions at county level. All the towns have passed, Apex, Chapel Hill, you know, people want renewables. We want to stop this pollution. And yet it just keeps seeming to go on. And why is that? I think the Koch brothers have infiltrated our legislature, thanks to Tom Tillis being an ALEC and being the head of the state legislature, and now spreading his poisonous ideas to the federal and the Senate as well, working against our people. So it's not only, you know, federal and Senate, it's everybody. And Duke pays everybody to do this. So it's a poison system, and we're getting our air poison from this monopoly money from Duke, and it's got to stop, and we need to do it in every corner and every way possible, including DAQ, getting with the program, as people have said. Step up and do the right thing, because y'all have children and grandchildren, and it's today. It's us. We're trying to save ourselves. Never mind our kids and grandkids. It's getting way worse. And 1 degree is 1 billion people dead. If the Earth gets 1 degree, I think centigrade, which is 2 degrees Fahrenheit, approximately, that's 1 billion people dying from heat. And it's not just old people and babies. It's everybody. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for your comments.
Howard Gebhardt, your mic will be unmuted and you may proceed with your comment.
Thank you. My name is Howard Gebhardt, Gebhart. I'm a senior air quality scientist employed at Air Resource Specialists, and I'm appearing at this hearing on behalf of the National Parks Conservation Association and other conservation organizations, many of which you've already heard from tonight. In general, the draft First, I'd like to start with a summary of my qualifications and expertise. I have more than 40 years experience as an air quality professional with a specialized expertise in air quality modeling. My comments focus on the modeling aspects of the SIP, but address general modeling concerns like emission inputs and how the modeling data have been applied. My comments are not specific to the details of the CAMX model itself, but instead are generic to concerns applicable to any air quality modeling study. In general, the draft North Carolina Regional Haze SIP requires significant improvement before it can be finalized and sent to EPA for approval. I have prepared or am preparing written comments that will be included with the NPCA comment package, and those detail various deficiencies in the SIP visibility modeling and how the modeling results were applied. My verbal testimony here is a summary of those comments that I'm preparing. First, the selection of sources contributing to visibility impairment was much too restrictive. In the end, sources selected by North Carolina for analysis of emission controls represented only between 3 to 6% of the total extinction budget on the 20% most impaired days. Many more sources representing a larger fraction of the actual visibility impairment need to be considered if the SIP hopes to achieve reasonable progress toward visibility improvement. The modeling approach also relied too much on the CAMX PSAT results as the sole indicator of whether a source contributed to visibility impairment. The area of influence or AOI analysis was not used except to select sources for the PSAT modeling. However, the AOI modeling in fact provided useful information and identified whether facility emissions would be transported through a nearby Class 1 area. North Carolina should have placed greater reliance on the AOI modeling in its selection of contributing sources. The SIP also failed to require emission controls at the few sources that were evaluated. Reasonable progress cannot be achieved if no additional control measures are imposed on the sources causing visibility impairment. The lack of control measures was compounded by the 2028 emission projections, which showed substantial emission decreases at many sources. Without enforceable controls, achieving these emission reductions will not be assured. Any and all emission reductions relied upon in the visibility modeling need to be made enforceable through the SIP or through a revised permit. My last point is that the 2028 emission projections appear to reflect changes in the utilization at large EGU units in North Carolina. However, the visibility modeling did not reflect any changes in EGU utilization. The projected reduction in annual emissions was carried in the model as an across-the-board reduction in the expected 2028 hour-by-hour emissions. In reality, 2028 short-term EGU emissions are unlikely to change significantly in the absence of enforceable control measures. I remind you that visibility impairment is caused by short-term emissions, not by the annual emissions total. The modeling did not accurately reflect the expected 2028 operation of EGUs, and as such did not accurately calculate the expected 2028 visibility impacts. Again, I will ask you to refer to my written comments for the technical information that support these remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gebhardt. That is currently all the names that I have for those who pre-registered or registered and raised their hand since we closed the pre-registration commenters. If you didn't register to speak but still would like to provide comments on the draft regional Haste SIP, please remember that there are several other ways to provide your comments until the end of the comment period on October 15th at midnight. You can call 919-707-8403 and leave a voicemail message with your first and last name, whom you're representing, and state that your comments are related to the draft SIP. Or you can provide written comments until the comment period ends on October 15th, 2021. To provide written comments, you can please email those to daq.publiccomments@ncdenr.gov with NCRH SIP in the subject line. You can also mail written comments to the address listed in the public notice. Comments received during tonight's hearing and throughout the comment period and DAQ's responses to those comments will be included in the hearing record for the final SIP submittal to US EPA. Having no further indication of a desire for others to speak, I will thank you again for your cooperation, attendance, and your interest in the draft regional Haze SIP. And I will now adjourn this public hearing. Thank you again.